Hey AI builders! As you might know, it's actually quite tough to build a good backend for an AI assistant. But recently Voiceflow came out with a new template, what they suggest you start with, and it has some really good nuggets of knowledge in there. And so I want to use this video to just walk through that together. And if you're anything like me and you used Voiceflow in the past, the things they provide to you in the beginning was something that I just select and delete, and many of you would usually do the same. But recently some new features came in here, or some new pre-built flows, and they have really great things. So let's look at it together. And so the beginning is actually quite basic. They just collect an answer after a greeting and suggest some buttons. These book a demo and submit a ticket, they're not even built out, they are kind of dummies here. But what is built out is this knowledge base response. And just to show you, if you don't enter any knowledge base in the beginning, what you get is just Voiceflow as a default. And of course you can, as usual, enter any kind of website here. But let's quickly ask some kind of question that you could get an answer here from Voiceflow. So let's just ask, what are your services? And what you'll notice is that you get an answer which has a really nice format. It looks slightly buggy here with the spacing, but it has a list, it has bold text which is formatted, and it uses emoji, and it's just very nice and friendly. And I didn't used to get this kind of quality answers, but since I implemented this new logic with my AI assistant for my clients and users, I also get this logic, which is really great. So now let's look at some things that they're actually doing. Let's end this chat and go to the workflow. We can go right to the knowledge base response. And here, first, let's not look inside the individual items, but just appreciate the overview. So you don't have a single step, which is either knowledge base or a prompt, but it's split into separate steps. So first, the question is optimized to get better knowledge out of the knowledge base, and some other things. We'll look into details here. Then the optimized question is actually sent to the knowledge, and the output is generated. If there is no good response and the score of relevance is too low, then the user gets guided towards entering more information without trying to give an answer which wouldn't be correct. And then the answer, only then, if it's the score is high enough, the answer is crafted and the response is given, and then in this template flow it is then ready to listen again. And there are even some additional things you can insert here. They have an advanced module video overview here, which you can check out to see what they are about. We'll skip them for today. And actually I also didn't implement them yet in my AI assistants, but they can make that even more advanced. And now let's look at this knowledge flow step by step, which is what it went through when I just asked my question earlier about the services. So if you look at this, optimize the user question and detect languages. It's a really long prompt. Let's first scroll through them. There's actually two prompts. The first one stores the variable optimized question. And what it does is it asks an AI assistant, you are an AI assistant specialized in generating optimal questions for retrieval, augmented generation, and so on and so forth. It describes the task in quite a lot of detail, how it should phrase those questions. It gives some examples. And by the way, I should mention here, if you try to use this template for yourself, you need to change these examples. So I recommend you just copy this whole prompt and you paste it in ChatGPT or Claude, and you ask it to update it to your own purpose. Because if you don't change it, the answers will be weird. It doesn't generate good knowledge from these base prompts. These only work for Voiceflow specifically because it's a technical use case. And so anyways, here it gives the kind of sample answers, and it stores them in the variable optimized question, and is based on the last utterance, but also Voiceflow memory, which is the last 10 inputs. You can also see that here in this yellow box. The last utterance autosaves the last thing that the user said, and the Voiceflow memory is the last 10. And the last response is the last thing that the AI agent said to the user. So that's the first thing. But another really interesting thing here is that the AI assistant now also saves the language. And it actually stores that in kind of a JSON format, which with this structure, language, confidence, and reasoning. And the interesting thing is, as far as I can tell, the AI assistant doesn't even do anything with the confidence and the reasoning, but asking it to do those steps makes the answer about the language better and higher quality. It's more often correct if you ask the AI assistant to think about it. It's really interesting. And there are a lot of examples you can look at. These I don't think you even need to update because this is not really content specific. One thing though that I changed for myself here is that here it asks, consider the previously determined language if available. And in my use case, I don't want that. I want that if a user changes the language, because they might start in English and then switch to German or Chinese or whatever. If they switch the language, I want the AI assistant to switch the language as well, not stay with the old language. So I'm kicking out this one, and lower down there are other things that you also need to change. Like here, you then only want it to consider the last utterance and not the ones before. Like for example, the previous said language, I also take this one out. But that's kind of detail, and it's really interesting to have the language stored in this variable. Because before I saw this approach, what I did is I would build out different workflows for different languages, which is a lot of work and it's not really useful. I didn't really figure out how you can change the language of the buttons with this variable, because if you just try to change like okay, I'm not going into detail here, but it's not as easy as you might think it is. So I'll keep you updated on that if I can figure out how you can also configure the language of the buttons. So that is some of the language features and the improved prompt. And then the next step is to here search the knowledge base. And what it does here is basically just do the knowledge base search, and it uses these optimized questions as a question, nothing else, and it saves the variable in chunks, and the default here is 4 chunks. And the only thing you can change here is if you go to this do not found path, you can ask for the minimum chunk score, like the confidence that the AI needs to have that this is the relevant answer. But to be honest, I mostly get scores above 80 or 90%, so I didn't find this to be terribly relevant so far. And to be honest, even the answers that are not really relevant get a very high score for me. So you need to see with your own knowledge base how that works. But if you can figure out a time that the score is not high enough, then it makes sense to forward here. That's actually set by default. I just accidentally deleted it before. And if you do that, you will get a guidance for the user. You're a customer support bot that tries to help the user, guide them towards asking for support. So they get guided how they can ask the right question. Of course, they're guided in the determined language. And then the AI assistant listens again. And if that is not the case, but the score is high enough, it goes on here. And you see the answer is generated in interesting steps. So these are not the steps of the answer, but the step of the reasoning. Extract the relevant information from chunks. Then respond formatting in caps lock. This is very important. Then a markdown syntax, which is responsible for the boldening that we saw in the sample before. Verification, conciseness and clarity, and no extra information. So if their information is not relevant, then it will give the output, sorry, I'm not sure about that one. Is there anything else? And here, this is just in English, so you might want to change this to also update according to the language that the user is using. And the rest here, this is all great. And this will create these really nice outputs, and then we're already at the end. And if you then want to show buttons again, instead of listening here, you just forward again to another location. For example, you might forward it again to these buttons, book a demo, book a submit a ticket, and you can of course just separate this out if you want to have only the buttons not together with this. Yeah, and so that's a brief overview about some new really interesting elements from this new template. And you need to change most of these prompts to suit your context. You can't just copy them, but if you do that, it will be really great. And maybe one last adaptation that I also found really useful. Sometimes this optimized question, what it does here is actually creating these long questions, and they don't always give better output from the knowledge base. So what I also do sometimes is that I don't search for the optimized question, but I just use the user input, which is stored in the last utterance. I just use the last utterance directly and search the knowledge base as a previous step. So let me show you what I mean. What I would do, I would duplicate this one, and instead of looking for the optimized question, you just look for the last utterance, and then you do this first because this is easier. If it works, you just continue crafting the response based on this. If the score is too low, let's say you need at least 90% here, then you go use the optimized question. And of course, you could move this optimized question, this first prompt of these two in here. You could also move that between those two. That would use less tokens because you don't need the optimized question in case the knowledge already is retrieved from the last utterance. So that's one adaptation that I found myself to even further improve that template. All right, and so this was the new Voiceflow template and some insights that I gained from it. Did you already use this? And if yes, how useful did you find it? Did you discover any useful insights? I'd love to hear about it in the comments, and I hope I'll see you in my next video. Have a great day, everyone.